Let me put you on game to a different way of thinking. Black King, empower the youth to live the truth, got big dreams. Black King, all of my brothers that are for each other, that's how we know we. Black King, bringing more unity to community, yeah. Black King.
Yes, you know what time it is. My royal family, welcome to the King's Hour. My name is Walter Watson, like always. I got my kings with me. Mook, talk to me.
Yeah, we in here.
That's right. JoJo?
Yo, what's good?
Nice. Look, I'm super excited because if you did not know, it is May. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it was only right for us to talk about mental health and the topic for today. Black men and their mental health is something that we don't talk about enough, but we're going to make sure we talk about that today because we have two special guests. Now, these ain't just regular people walking on the street. These are two doctors that are making sure that they're helping lives. So who better else than to talk to Dr. Smith and Dr. Baiden? How are you guys doing? Talk to us. How's your guys' day going?
Thank you for having us. This is great. We're so excited to be here and all of this beautiful energy and just getting the word out.
Nice.
Yes, I second that. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Now, they're really kind and sweet, but even starting with Dr. Baiden now, she's a primary care physician with a passion to provide access, inclusion, and expanding cognition when it comes to the mental health and opening up your mind when it comes to mental health. That is the goal that she's passionate about and that she will make sure she does on a daily basis. And even Dr. Smith, he is a board certified physician associated with primary care, but mainly he deals with behavioral health. So it was only right for us to have him included as well to talk about what he has seen in the mental health area as well. And then he's going to probably talk about as well some of the different neurosciences that he's doing to broaden the mind and the technology that's out there to make sure that we are not keeping depression and things like that as a stigma, but as just a different way to treat. So again, we are excited to have both of you guys in the King's Hour. So with no further ado, like when it comes to mental health in Black men, what have you guys seen in your guys' own experience on a day-to-day basis?
I think, first of all, I just want to say another thank you to all of you for letting a lady be on the podcast and to discuss
That's
this.
Right.
I know it's probably not the one of the first people you think of to say, oh, what do you know about Black men's health? But I think our men present differently and not as classic as what we call or what we see in the DSM. The DSM is a standard medical it's a medical criteria that helps people distinguish or helps clinicians distinguish different pathology, whether it's depression, PTSD, attention deficit, or what have you. But there's not a good definition for race-based trauma, for example. That's not even included in the DSM at this time. And when you look at different presentation for depression or attention deficit, our people may not present classically, so we're often misdiagnosed. And if we're misdiagnosed, then we're not offered the appropriate treatment. And so that's what Darren and I see a lot in a day-to-day practice, unfortunately.
Interesting. That may be the first time I've heard of race-based drama when it comes to some of your patients, because I am a pharmaceutical rep, so I deal with a lot of bipolar patients and schizophrenic patients. And we're always talking about the DSM-5 criteria on how you diagnose these patients. But you're absolutely right. There's nothing on race at all. So help me understand how that could be different when you're dealing with different patients.
Darren, you want to go for this one?
Well, yeah, I mean,
since you kind of wrote a book on it.
Erica got jokes, y'all. And also, look, she talked about this. She talked about, Erica, you are raising a young king, so you deserve to be in this space as much as anyone. Okay? Absolutely. So, so I think, y'all, this stems from generations of racism that began in the late 1600s, early 17th century in the United States when slave laws came on the books, and the treatment between blacks and whites became, inked in blood, and sold in law. And so just the history of that over time, and you all know this history well, up until the end of the last civil rights law that was signed in 1968, African Americans have been dealing with grotesque racism, so much to the point to where the brain has actually reconfigured itself to accommodate to the misery that African Americans have had to endure through epigenetics. You guys, I think maybe we talked a little bit about that before, but I'll pass it on to Erica. Before I do that, I was wanting to say about this part of it, at least, is over time, having to deal with insults, things like racial slurs, hair pulling, hair touching, skin touching, where are you from, feeling notions of incompetence, beliefs that Black people are incompetent or less deserving as whites, and these people who are doing this may not even be aware they're doing it. That's the thing. It's so innocuous. It's so unconscious. They may not even be aware they're doing it, but yet the effect is there. And so African Americans are very sensitive to that. At least, we're sensitive to the fact that we've been dehumanized for generations, for centuries, and so the cumulative effect of that over time can lead to something like race-based trauma. And all it takes is just a tipping point, right? So I would argue that it's not something that necessarily happens in an instance, but it's something that sort of happens over time with continued, microaggressions that occur and macroaggressions as well that affect Black people on a day-to-day basis. May I say one more thing about this? It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Walton, when we were talking about how the numbers currently, as it stands, is 1 million dead from COVID, right? 250,000 children who have lost at least one parent as a result of COVID. 65% of those children are people of color, African Americans and Latinos. So we took it hard. And so it's not just the toll of losing a parent, but it's the trauma 30 seconds associated with it. You feel me? The trauma associated with that African Americans have to carry around, in addition to the other things that we've experienced as well.
Yeah, it's always something, right? When it comes to Black people in general in our mental health, it's always something that's coming out of nowhere that seems to dictate our leaders, our parents, and take them out of the equation. And again, it seems to line up really with mental health, because who are we following? Who are we paying attention to? Who are we trying to talk to? When they're gone, it leaves just us. So it's hard. So how do you get past that? Like that's hard.
That's a great question. I think it takes something like this, something where there is a safe space, somebody to hold space for you, whether it's a trusted friend, whether it's an auntie or an uncle who has experienced a change of view and it says, hey, we can't continue to do this, whether it's what you bring to your conscious, what are you listening to on the radio or whatever. People don't listen to the radio anymore, but what are you listening to on a podcast? What are you listening to on a TV screen? What are you exposing yourself to? And so if you're going to keep in a certain mindset, what are the people around you also in that mindset? And I think that's what it takes to help shift the consciousness. And as a primary care physician, it's my job to establish a space of trust and a relationship and rapport with the person so that over time, they feel safe enough to bear what's really going on. And for me to listen without judgment and with an unspoken understanding, so that way we can begin that healing process. So I think representation matters, representation in medicine. We've suffered so many different atrocities in the name of medicine, right? With experiments that were done to us, unbeknownst to us, without our consent. And so it's hard for us to really want to even navigate the medical system and find trust. 13% of the United States is Black or African American, and only 2% of that are physicians. And so how are you supposed to find someone in that space who you feel safe with, or who is going to represent you and understand? And even there's probably even fewer clinicians who are mental health providers specifically. So that puts another barrier in place. And so I think, what Darren and I are trying to do is not only let people know that we're out there, but also mentor young people so that they want to go into this field as well. I'm a part of a group here in Utah called Black Physicians of Utah. And part of that is to not only say, hey, we're around, but to have a central location where people can go to say, well, I'm looking for a clinician in this space that looks like me. And then also to mentor students at the University of Utah. And there's a new medical school, an osteopathic medical school in Provo. And we're trying to mentor those students there as well, who are BIPOC students.
No, that's huge.
I have a quick question for you, Dr. Baiden. Again, thinking about your king that you're raising, right? And thinking about all the trauma that's built up over the centuries for people that look like us. How are you taking a deliberate approach to helping fix that within his life early on to make sure that his mental well-being is a lot further ahead than most of us that didn't have access to somebody like you?
What a great question, and thank you for that question. My young king is 5, and he is mixed race. So his father's Caucasian, and I'm Black. And we have so many different perspectives, different upbringings. But his dad, my son's dad, also grew up with a single mom. I grew up with a single mom. So I think there's that understanding of what it means to be a man and what it means to have respect. We try to also instill that, when you get older, things are going to be a little bit different for you. And so there are things that you can and cannot do. And at 5, that comprehension, that understanding is not quite there. But I think also being a little bit more gentle in my parenting. That's the important thing for him, so that he understands how to express himself, so that he knows from day one that his feelings are understood and heard, and that he also has some agency. Like, I'm not going to let him run around the streets wild, but he does have some agency. He does have some emotional intelligence. And I think instilling in that, like, a sense of who he is early. And so that way he can speak up for himself. So that way he knows if somebody says something that does not characterize him, that he knows that that is not true, that we don't have to be reactive about it. We are being proactive about it now.
That's huge.
I love it. I love that.
And I think that's beautiful, because we've talked about it before, is that a lot of times as men, ego is here, pride is here, and sometimes we're a lot reactive when it comes to just our emotions because we don't even know what to do with it. And like you said, you have patients come to you and they feel a little bit more comfortable coming to you. Now, in your experience, have you seen that be the case where you have Black men or even Black women that come to you and they don't even know how to physically show that emotion because they'll either get upset or get angry and cry, but they don't know how to express emotions? Is that something that you guys see in your guys' day-to-day?
I'd like to say,
I
apologize, Dan. I've probably spoken too much.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to say and give credit to our people. I think our generation is so much more aware of their emotions, their feelings, and better to express themselves than some of my older BIPOC patients. And so that I'm really grateful to see. Nonetheless, it does still take some time. And I think maybe what they come in initially for is not really what they're coming in for. And so it takes some skill, it takes some experience to kind of peel back the layers to get to the real heart of the concern. So that's where I see it. And I'm so sorry, I'm on call. Can I just take this call and put on mute and I'll be right back? I'm so sorry.
Okay, do your thing.
Absolutely.
Make that money, girl. Make that money. So what I'm saying is, oh man, y'all know Black men, we've been dogged from day one. Y'all know. So the impacts on Black men have been catastrophic. I mean, so you can only find us in a few places. First of all, there ain't very many of us to begin with. Maybe 6 to 7% of African Americans are men, right? To begin with. So of that percentage, about a third of us is in the Army, right? A third of us are missing, just completely went missing on the Census Bureau, or incarcerated. Right. So and then, but I think all of this is purposeful. This is not by accident. This is all by design, because African American men have always represented a threat to the white establishment. And as a result of that, I think we've been systematically hounded and dogged and belittled and marginalized and kept out and shut out and made to really feel the full-throated effects of racism, right down to the fact of police involved shootings. So one way, and then so I'm here. So blackness doesn't look the same, right? So what blackness looks like in Utah is something different here in the South, where I'm from, in Memphis, right? So in Memphis, there's a real high degree of skepticism when it comes to mental health disorders, right? The belief is that if you have a mental health disorder, you should be able to pray it away, or that the pastor, or shepherd of the congregation should be the one that you should go see the pastor, so the pastor can take care of that for you. So there's complete obliviousness when it comes to, looking at the brain as an organ, much like the heart or the stomach or the lungs, and that it suffers just diseases of the mind, just like any other area of the body would suffer. And so to get people to again trust in a medicine that has betrayed them, historically.
Yeah.
A type of medicine that really isn't for us. It's really not FUBU. I'll just say that. I mean, Western medicine, it was never meant to be FUBU.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's now this sort of, and I would say a very slow progress of people kind of, well, what can we do now to improve the overall quality of the destruction that we've caused over, the last 350 years, since Black people have been here, in the United States. Much of our existence in this country has been either enslaved or enslaved in near slavery-like conditions, right? For much of our history, we've only really been free since the last civil rights law was signed in '68. If you want to look at it from a legalistic time frame, so and white people have all this time to create new ways to marginalize and oppress Black people. And I say this because we don't talk enough about this.
Right.
We try to pussyfoot around when it comes to the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is racism. It's systemic racism and the effects of that, and how it's impacted us in ways that we can't imagine. Black on Black crime, like here,
Memphis. Do y'all stay on First 48? Yeah, I know the streets.
It goes down here. It goes down here. People shoot first, ask questions later, and that's again a manifestation of what? Impulse control. People being not knowing how to deal with their emotions, never having been taught to deal with their emotions. Why? Well, for one, ain't no Black men around. That's one of the ways that Black men in general, help their children to be able to manage their emotions, to be cool in the face of adversity, right? To be even check this out, y'all. This is what's messed up about it. You can be a trifling man, right? Don't really mess with your kids, don't really interact with your kids much, but you in the house. You being in the house is enough to set that kid on the course of, as long as you don't abuse that kid, but just being there, just not being very responsive, is better than not being there at all in terms of the impact that it has on a kid.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
It doesn't take much. You just got to be there.
Oh, just got to be there.
So what, in your opinion, what does mentally balanced look like for us? What goes into that? Does that mean always, actively seeking out therapy on a regular basis? Does that mean, taking certain medications? Because you mentioned something that is really, I think that, from a faith standpoint, I think faith served its purpose from a moral compass for us. But I also think that, it got to a point where it was like, all right, it made you not question, it made you not able to question anything.
It's kind of hindered us a little bit.
Yeah, that's it. Like you had to pray and that was it. The minute you stopped praying and believed in something, you were no longer religious. So like thinking about how you walk that line and you kind of introduce this space to people, what does that perfect mental balance look like to you?
I would say FUBU with religion too.
Mm.
That's not us. That's not about us either. That's they stuff. That's not us.
Mm.
We didn't
Talk about
worship
it.
Jesus in
Mm.
Africa. We didn't. That wasn't our religion. We adopted it and try to transform it. You know, but you still put still about a lipstick on a pig, right? It's still a pig. You put lipstick on a pig. I mean, so we have to really create a new way of seeing ourselves as Black people in a society that has been anti-Black from day one and continues to be.
Yeah.
And so, but to your question, Mook, what does that look like? Peace, brother, peace, just peace.
Be at peace.
Just not having to worry about, it must be nice, man, not having to worry about having to be followed when you're in the store, being safe when you get pulled over by police, not having to worry about people questioning your intelligence, your very existence, right? But it must be nice, really nice to have that experience. Something we would never know. The only thing I came close to at one time was during our desert storm when everybody was so patriotic. Patriotic, right? I walk in my uniform. People actually saw past my Blackness.
Mm.
I was like, damn, this is much what it feels like to be white. Wow.
Wow. Right.
Damn.
Right.
Yeah, you're just
so good, boy.
Right.
So I think peace, but it has to be cultivated, right? It's something that doesn't come easy for us because of what you said earlier, Walt. But with the ego,
Yeah.
ego, we're too identified with our egos, and our egos are directly related to capitalism.
Ooh.
And the impact that it has on the way in which corporations shape identities and the way in which we conform to it. Now, social media being one of the major engines for this. And the impact that's had on you. Have you guys heard about what's happening to young kids on social media?
No, what's going on? Like,
Oh,
they killing on themselves?
Increase in depression,
Suicide.
increase in suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
I mean, the impact is most powerfully felt in young women. And so, if we're talking about young women broadly, but who's probably catching hell the most, like young women of color, because they don't have the means to even pretend to put enough makeup on or do whatever they got to do to enhance their image, right? So that they get, because what all humans want is to be loved, to be affirmed, to be told that we matter in the world, that we're something, that we are more than the sum of our parts. That's what we want, man. And we'll do anything to get it.
You've said, when you talk about spiritual religion and it comes to mental health, I don't think that is talked about enough at all. Because I'm being completely honest, I haven't thought of it like that. I've always thought, obviously, if you have an issue, you pray on it, but you go get help as well. But if I'm really being honest, I think majority of us would just pray about it. You know what I mean? And be like, hey, help me get through this. And you kind of keep it internal because you're going to pray and not seek help. And studies show the people that are seeking help the most are white people. And like you said, it's because these medications are made for them, by them, and they're comfortable and confident with it. So do you also say to pray, but also go seek help? You have to. You can't just leave it to the higher beings.
I like that you.
Go ahead, Erica. Go ahead. I was going to say just.
No, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say any reasonable person who understands what you're saying, Walt, would say that.
Yeah.
Right. Would say I'm not knocking prayer, because there's been some really good, powerful work done in the prayer sphere. What I'm talking about is organized religion, right? And the interpretation of organized religion, people's own interpretation of religion, and how that interpretation is then thrusted upon congregations, right? And they can either they conform or they don't conform, and the punishments and the anguish that goes with that, right? If you're not a member of a church family, and the ostracism that you face from your family members, and the community if you're not going to church and participating in church, especially the Black community here, especially down here. I see a lot of that down here because people always ask me, man, what church family you go to? What church? What's your church home? I don't have no church home. So,
Yeah. You're judged immediately. You are judged
instantly. Why would I want to? Why do I want to be in that? I don't want to be involved in that.
I think
I got enough judgments to worry about. You feel me? I don't want to be in that. And if that's a representation of God, if that's a representation, I don't want that. I'll pass.
Jojo, you're gonna say something.
Oh no, I was just gonna build off your question, but it's all good. You kind of covered it. But I was gonna say, as far as accessibility, right? I think is that another hurdle that we see with Black men, that access to healthcare, poverty, things like that. How much does that affect us getting that help that we need? Because I read somewhere that I think it was, I don't know, like 10% or something have access to that healthcare, to medical health or healthcare. How does that affect us getting that mental health care that we need?
Think about when are doctor's hours? 9 to 5.
8:30 to 5. Yeah, 9 to 5.
When are you working?
That's save damn hours.
Okay, and then what if you have children?
Oh, you gotta go get the kids. Who's gonna babysit the kids?
Okay, and so right there, even if you have insurance, there's still a barrier to access, right?
All the barriers, yeah.
When are you gonna go?
Right,
Ooh.
and so there's a lot to deconstruct here, right? And then when you look at where clinicians are, how close is that to maybe your place of business versus where you live? And so that's taking extra time out of your day. And if we're talking about poverty, the people who need access most, when they're taking time off of work, are they getting paid?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're telling a person who's already suffering to put an extra burden on themselves by taking time away from work, having less pay, trying to shuffle around a child or multiple to go seek help.
By design, right?
Yes.
Right.
So there's systems in place that are meant to keep a certain group of people where they are. I'm just saying.
Yeah. So for our listeners that may have that issue where they don't have time to go seek a provider, what are maybe some tips that you can give to the listeners to be like, hey, here's an option that you can do if you're proactively doing it? What's something that you guys should suggest or have seen?
Have you heard of Black Men Heal?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So they're online, they're a resource, and they actually do telehealth visits specific to Black men and their mental health.
Ooh.
Yes.
Black Men Heal.
I will write that one down.
And I want
Right.
to read a quote from them. That was a good segue, Walt. How did you know?
I don't like to tell people all my secrets.
This is a quote from Black Men Heal, and this is their mantra. They said, "I'm no less a man because I fear. I'm no less a man because of mental health struggles. I'm no less a man because only I get to decide what it means for me to be a man."
It's powerful.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what do you say? What do you say to that Black man, right? Because me personally, it took everything in me to dumb down my ego, because all me, Mook, and Walt were all ex-athletes, right? We're supposed to be this macho, tough, breadwinners, everything that comes along with it.
Yeah.
See how have you seen that? I had to dumb down my ego to just get to therapy and want to go see a doctor. How do you tell somebody, or what do you say to the other athletes, the other Black men, when it comes with issues like that? Because it took a lot. It took years for me to go see a therapist. You know what I'm saying? It took a long, long time. It took a long, long time to get a regular doctor. It's hard. It's hard to get, especially as a Black man. My dad I begged this man to go to the doctor. You know how old heads are. They won't go see anybody. So what do you say to those black men?
I think it's you, all of you, what you say to each other. I think it starts outside of our office, honestly, and that community. So I think the more that we talk about it in this kind of platform, and hopefully that just sends out seeds and it just spreads, that we can talk about it and that it is okay, that it is accepted, that it's destigmatized, and that you're like, yo, you feel like that too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I hear that. Oh, what about with this? You know what I mean? I think that's where it starts. And then you can find the clinicians to get the other ways to treat it. But this is a form of healing as well.
Right.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's huge because thinking of my brothers, so my mother and my father have passed, right? My mom passed from brain cancer, and my father passed from an unexpected heart attack. And one of my biggest regrets being the oldest sibling is not showing my emotions.
Yeah.
Even to my grandpa, who would say, like, you can, he told me, like, you can let it out. You know what I mean? And I don't know where I got this macho idea that, hey, I have to be the strong one. But I think by me doing that, it then my siblings kind of followed suit, my other brothers. My sisters, they were still emotional, but my brothers even more, because when we did talk about going to therapy and talking about how we felt, they refused to do it. Like as if we coached them as kids to be like, hey, we don't go to therapy. We don't do that. That's weak. So then, yeah. So I was like, why am I okay with going to therapy? And I'll go do it. But my brothers aren't at all. Like, it's terrible. I didn't tell them that. But then when I think about it, I showed them that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So if I'm reflecting, one of my biggest regrets is not being emotionally open to my younger siblings, and it's hard to say, but it's true.
Can I jump in?
Recognize it, you know, you're recognizing it and you're saying it, and that's where all this starts. And so give yourself that credit at least.
Yeah, well, I think you're being too hard on yourself, man. You keep forgetting what we keep talking about, right? White supremacy.
Yeah.
You know, so what you're suffering from is what all men suffer from, men of color in particular, white men who are in lower status to elite white men, is this idea of toxic masculinity, right? And part of that archetype is the strong silent type, right? Hold your emotions in, right? Don't let them see you sweat, right? That's all part of what we talked about earlier, John Henryism, right? Yeah. Stuffing your emotions, right? Or not knowing how to, or not having emotional intelligence because you never had anybody to teach you emotional intelligence, right? And people are, of course, very impulsive when they don't have the emotional intelligence. So I would reframe what you said earlier, Walt, in the gentlest form is don't be so hard on yourself. Recognize where you live. You live in the United States. We don't give that. Y'all need to wrap your head around the fact that we live in a racist society and the impact that that's had on us all, right?
That's that racial trauma we were trying to tell you
absolutely.
about. That isn't widely recognized, but it affects everything every day for all of us.
Without us even knowing.
Yes.
Don't even realize it.
Yeah. Back in the day, like during when people were enslaved, they were also taught to hold emotions. And so there was because if you laughed, if you cried and you weren't supposed to, for example, so some enslaved people would actually let out a laughter or let out some kind of emotion into a barrel. And so some people think that's where a barrel of laughs came from historically. And so it seems to have stemmed from way back, even in that culture, that's been taught to just kind of hold it in because of the repercussions of showing your emotion as an enslaved person.
And that's actually where I was going to go too, because like thinking about that was a means of survival for so long. I mean, and even now thinking about Memphis, like there's probably a lot of people that are like, I can't show no weakness because I'm the hardest on the block. And if I'm showing weakness, I become a target. I mean, I think you're about to hit it. Go ahead.
You're right, Mookie. But the difference is, remember, the differences between what that means for young Black men in urban America is different from what that means in middle class Black America and white America and beyond, right? Folks who have education, the way that they look at masculinity, right? For them, expressions of masculinity involve a trophy wife, a house, a car, all of that stuff. A dog named Boo, a white picket fence, a Chevrolet, an apple pie, and
Right.
all that stuff, right? So, and Black men in urban settings who are not able to achieve that, right, no fault of their own, they express masculinity differently. For them, all I have is my reputation.
Right.
All I have is my self-respect. If you step on my self-respect, which is something very asinine, as y'all know, and something very superficial, but for these folks, it's everything, right? It's not being
That's what I
soft.
got.
It's not being perceived as being soft, right? For one, or you set yourself up for being bullied, or these other things that we do as Black men because we can't express masculinity in its much toxic forms that white elite men have created these archetypes that nobody can live up to, not even them, right? And so we always compare ourselves to that archetype. And I keep saying FUBU. Quit thinking like them. You got to think like us, right? And put us in the narrative, us in the center of that narrative. And I'm not saying that I hate white folk and all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying that how society was created, it was created in an anti-Black fashion. Black people were not a part of that narrative. Neither were poor white people, neither were women of all stripes were not a part of that narrative. So what we have today as the United States and all of its glory, in part has been created by elite white men who have power and means to control the narrative.
That's great. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
I want us to circle back to the spirituality question, because I think it is important to have mental health, that you do need to have some semblance of spirituality, but it doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. We all can have our, whatever that means to you, whether it's religion, whether it's meditation, whether you say prayer, it's having a connection to something outside of yourself, something that's higher, something that gives you some kind of hope and peace. I think that is important. So I think spirituality and mental health go hand in hand, but how you define it should be up to you. I think where it comes, where the detriment is in organized religion is where you are made to fear and you're made to have shame in order to fall in line. And I think that's another form of oppression, in all honesty. And I think as we talk about different ways to handle our mental health, I think it allows people to deconstruct with their religious beliefs and find a different form of spirituality. And that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, I was going to say. I like that.
Yeah.
I think we all, I think to your point, Dr. Baiden, I think we're all spiritual beings. But again, Walt, I'm keep going back to what you said earlier at the very outset. The ego gets in the way and prevents us from seeing that the deeper meaning of that spirituality. And basically what I mean by that is how we are connected to the universe, right? And what that means for each of us in our own respective journeys. Wink, wink. Any rate.
So how are y'all going about that? I mean, because you guys are serving that to people and serving them and taking them from where they're at and trying to propel them to that place. So what do you do to get them to that space?
So traditionally, there are certain medications that we can prescribe to help people, especially when they're acutely suffering or sick with a mental health concern, or when we find that that mental health concern is affecting their day-to-day. And these medications, they've been around for decades and they have been helpful for people. I'm not going to lie. I do value the ability to prescribe what are called SSRI medications, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressants more classically known. But we as an allopathic society have not gotten past the next step. Yes, we have a person that is on this medication, and what these medications do, in all honesty, I think is just numb. They just numb or palliate without really addressing or getting to the root cause of the issue or of the concern. It doesn't really serve a person to bring them out of where they are into a new space. And so that's what I think Dr. Smith and I are trying to help our people specifically have, because there are new studies out there, there are new trials, there are new ways of treatment that we've been excluded from. And so when you look at the data in these different environments, we are not represented. And that's the concern that I have, is that if these novel treatments are so great and promising with such significant remission rates, why aren't we included? Why isn't that being addressed in our group of people who continually are subject to being marginalized? And so if we don't take action and get into that space, or instead of just even making a seat at the table, having our own table, then we're going to stay stuck where we are.
Go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just going to go off of you, and because you're saying that we need to have medication that is by us, for us, or at least for us. And even with me in my field, they have African American entered into the clinical data when it comes to supporting why a medication should be approved in the FDA approval list. But what we don't know is if it's really effective for the African American or not. They'll say maybe 100 people went in the trial, 60% of them, it was very effective. But we don't know, shoot, it could have been the whole 40% with African Americans that didn't do well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I tell you something really interesting? So back in the day, not back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, but we were taught as clinicians that Black people with hypertension or high blood pressure do better with a specific type of medication called calcium channel blockers, where at that time, the standard of care was something better like a diuretic medication or something called an ACE inhibitor or an ARB. Those medications, the ACE inhibitor and the ARBs, had better kidney protection, had better heart failure protection, and cardiovascular outcomes. But yet we were said to have responded better to a group called calcium channel blockers. Right. Now we see that that's not the case. We do well with the same medication everybody else does.
Oops.
And it is a fact, like African Americans, when it comes to clinicians, you guys have to treat us different. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to blood pressure, when it comes to kidney function, JoJo can attest to that. But there is a difference. And I think that's the importance that I don't think most people realize is that when I go to the doctor, it's different formatting for me than when Susie Q goes to the doctor. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that's a fact. You know what I mean? So when it comes to mental health, I'm really interested in hearing more about the options that African Americans have or should at least know about, because there is truly a difference. So how can you speak on that a little bit to educate myself and the listeners?
First of all, make sure that you have the appropriate diagnosis.
But how do you, as a patient, how do you don't know that?
That's the thing. You're absolutely right, but I think it's important for you to also be empowered by whoever you're seeing to say, well, what are some resources? Where can I read up on this?
Absolutely.
A little bit more, and if you say, hey, I don't feel comfortable with medication right now, I want to do some of my own searching, to be empowered and respected enough to be like, okay, I see you, I hear you, that is fine. You're safe enough. I believe that would be an okay route. And then as we all start to talk to each other and see like, oh yeah, I feel that same way. And my physician or my clinician told me the same thing. And we start to see that, okay, yeah, maybe this is something that we're seeing as a community, as a group. And oh, this was helpful for you. That was helpful for me too. Again, the more we talk about it, the more we are transparent about what's been going on for us, the more that we are able to empower ourselves when we're navigating the healthcare system.
So somebody said something earlier. I just want to follow up on Erica. You had mentioned about I think we're heading into the plant medicine realm at one point.
Spirituality.
Tomato. Any rate, but my question is, some of those early experiments that were done with plant medicines were done on incarcerated people of color, African American men, and with using very shoddy by today's standards would never be considered,
ethical.
Legitimate research, or unethical for that matter. I mean, people were getting like 800 and something odd milligrams more of LSD than the average normal person would get. Just crazy stuff they were doing, during these early experiments in the late 60s and early 70s. So, and also the last thing I'll say is this, listeners, if you're out there, if you want to get really good care, healthcare, you need to find someone like Dr. Baiden. Research suggests that women providers do a much better job at adhering to the standards of care than men. Again, toxic masculinity. So if you want to live, find yourself a highly competent, like my dear colleague, Dr. Baiden, and go see a female provider. Sure enough, I'm telling you, it's been studied. So do yourself a favor.
I'll pay you later, Darren.
That's major. That's major.
Can I fly in and set up visits with you, or what? I know, right? I need to figure this out.
That's beautiful though. To know that there's studies that show that, and that women are really taking care of these kings. Our queens are taking care of these kings. Let's talk about it. A king can't be a king without the queen. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate your time, your effort, and helping us become better. So thank you again.
I think it's our job to take care of each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're a community. I think that's the bottom line with all this community connection. That's where we're going. That's how we get from point A to B.
Not you. Yes. Now, going over really the medication again, because I understand there's dopamines and serotonins, and sometimes you can just exercise and I'll give you the serotonin that you need. How do you guys like to treat your depressed patients or your mentally disabled patients, or whatever the case may be? What's the first step other than talking to them and listening to them, like you said? What is the next step? What can people be aware of and be confident in? Because you say like you need to ask questions, and people don't even know where to start to ask questions or what to do. So how could you educate the listeners and ourselves on like what is the next step and what are different options that we have?
First, let me put a disclaimer out that this is a discussion that is informative, and we do not in any way condone or support the use of any illegal substances. We are here for information. This does not constitute therapy or medical advice. If you are seeking or having questions, please talk to your own practitioner or seek out somebody. That being said, there are lots of different avenues of healing that people can approach. So there's traditional, like we talked about, antidepressant medications or SSRI medications. Serotonin is a very big and important neurotransmitter in how we process our emotions, our feelings, and our mood. There's other neurotransmitters like dopamine, and there's things like oxytocin. There's a plethora of things, glutamate, GABA, all sorts of neurotransmitters and how they affect the brain. And there's different medications that go about doing that. You've heard of Prozac, you've heard of Zoloft, you've heard of attention deficit medication stimulants that are amphetamine salts. You've heard of benzodiazepines like Xanax or Ativan, Valium, things like that. So there's a spectrum. And some of these medications are what we call scheduled or controlled substances. So controlled substances have a potential for abuse and misuse, and some say little medical benefit. And so there's a difference in schedule or classification of those medications, down from Schedule 1 all the way down to Schedule 5. Schedule 1 has absolutely no medical benefit whatsoever, and it's highly or the most abused. And these were kind of arbitrary classifications that were set forth in the late 1960s, early 1970s under Nixon, under President Nixon. And they weren't of any scientific merit. And some of these medications that are given these classifications are actually more harmful than alcohol, which we can buy over the counter. So I ask you all to kind of take a step back and see why certain medications have this classification and whether or not they deserve that classification. So for example, cannabis, weed, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, is considered a Schedule I federally. But through efforts, now we're seeing that there is plenty of medical benefit for cannabis.
They knew that. They knew that from day one.
Exactly.
Come on, man. They had to start a war on drugs.
So war on drugs. Who does it affect? Who does it disproportionately affect? Right? Who is jailed? Who's incarcerated? And now who's making billions of dollars?
Off of it.
Not us.
And those people are still in jail that were on it. That's the wild part.
Preach that. Yes.
That's wild.
And mostly black men. So that just destabilized our whole family unit, out the gate.
Like
and we're still recovering.
There's no Father's Day. Like that's what Dr. Smith was saying. No Father's Day. You take them out the house, you're already, the odds are against you.
Yeah.
So we're in straight recovery mode. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah.
No, this is the thing. These are the systems that are in place that keep us where we are. And so just remember that when you're voting. This is just a little, when you're voting, don't forget to vote at the local level. Don't forget to look at the judges that are being appointed. Don't just check a box. Really look into these people's backgrounds and their motives, their background. What are they advocating for? And what is their rate of criminal processing? Is that the kind of judge that we need? Do we need somebody who has a little less bias? Probably. So just remember to do that when you're voting. Take it seriously and actually vote.
Absolutely. That's huge. About I didn't know about the scheduled drugs, that they had no scientific measure to it. That's interesting to me. With being in the pharmaceutical world, that's all you hear from doctors is saying like, "Oh, that's Schedule I," and you hear like you shouldn't be on it, or obviously it's the most abused, but never thought about where that came from or who actually studied that. You know what I mean?
It was almost like they were like, "Who uses what?"
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Let's make it illegal.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all it was. They, it's probably more research that went into it, but it was like, who uses what? Oh, they do. All right, bet. Let's
Schedule
schedule.
Look at the language, right? War on drugs, opiate epidemic.
Right.
Let's make sure that there's Narcan
thing,
available.
right?
Yeah. Let's make sure that there's Narcan available. Let's make sure that there are therapists. Let's make sure that everyone is aware. Let's fight the system and make sure that we get our money and save these people.
Yeah. But it wasn't like that when it was the war on drugs.
And it's crazy, right? You drive around, you see the billboards. You have a family member on opiates. It's like, dang, that must be nice. My father's still, upstate. Like you said, there's still men still locked away because of the 80s and the 90s.
Right.
And we're out, but they're getting therapy right now. That access. Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into this more. Even for our listeners, understand that we have started a conversation that is far from over. We've talked about Black men and their mental health, where we've come from, where we're at, and the stigmas that come with it. Our goal with this podcast is obviously to keep it forefront so everyone is talking about it. Understand it's okay to say that you're not okay, and have someone that you can talk to. Fortunately, we as Kings, we have a group where we can be open and honest with each other and bring people on and have an open dialogue. And it's not easy to do. So we stress for our listeners, find one person that you can be comfortable with talking about how you feel and maybe what you're even going through. So even Dr. Baiden, before we get out of here, what is something else that you would like to leave with the listeners when it comes to just Black men and their mental health?
We got to talk about it.
Yeah.
You are all so important to our next generation and to this community. And I want to leave you with a couple of statistics that are pretty stark. 1 in 5 Black people or 20%, we're more likely to develop a mental health concern than a person who's white. Okay, we are 20% more likely. And then 1 in 25 of us, okay? It's the third leading cause of death in Black men 15 to 24 years of age is actually suicide.
Wow.
We don't talk about that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Exactly.
I didn't know that.
And so we need to talk about it. We and our Black men have the shortest life expectancy of any males in the United States for lots of different reasons, and mental health is part of that. So that's what I want to leave you. Like, this is serious.
Jesus.
You can't have your physical health without your mental health. So we need to start talking about it, and we need to start holding space.
Yeah. Wow. I did not know that. And that's a way that we want to close, because the next time we see you, we will then be talking about different options that people have to, once you know that you have an issue or you have a problem, what is the next step after that? And how do you prolong the efficacy that you need to stay resilient in this battle with any type of mental health someone is going through? So again, this is just the beginning, but Dr. Baiden, we appreciate you coming on board and leaving so many jewels. And we're excited for the next episode to open and listen to what you have to say, because you continue to enlighten us and our listeners as well. And also for the listeners, make sure that you like, you comment, you follow. Dr. Baiden, how can people get in contact or reach out to you?
I am a physician at Granger Medical in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am on Instagram. It's just eBaiden, EBAIDEN.
Most definitely. We'll tag that into the link as well. So just in case you want to reach out, learn something, she's always available. But most importantly, be kings today and every day. Peace.